Hello, and welcome to the Sharepoint and JavaScript Special Interest Group, the bi-weekly call. This is April 13th, 2017. I'm Patrick Rogers. Vesa is on vacation today, much-deserved vacation for him, so you'll got just me today. Real quick, going over what we do here on this call, the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group is all about providing a forum for discussion around updates and changes and challenges around the SharePoint Framework and getting feedback from folks out there in the community, as well as building the JavaScript core component, which a lot of folks on this call have used as well, and discussions around that. And then, of course, facilitating discussions around just client-side development in general as it relates to SharePoint. And we're part of the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program. And you've got two links down there. The first one, aka.ms/sppnp-community. And that will take you to the Microsoft Tech community, where you can post questions and ask for advice and sort of interact with other folks in the community, as well as those of us on the core team for Patterns and Practices. And then the bottom link there is dev.office.com/SharePoint. And that will take you to the one-stop shop for all things SharePoint development. So whether you're getting new into SharePoint Framework, whether you are looking for information around provider-hosted add-ins or add-in development in general, or even the full trust code WSP development, there's links for all of that there. So dev.office.com/SharePoint, and you can learn all about SharePoint development there. Would remind everybody, please stay on mute where possible, when possible, so we don't get any extra audio on the call. So moving right ahead, what are we going to cover today? We're going to do a quick update on the JavaScript core component. We don't have anything on the SharePoint framework today. As I said, Vesa's out, and there isn't anything terribly new to talk about this week, but we'll have some upcoming stuff, I believe, for the next call, so we'll see. We've got two great demos, one from John Liu on Azure Functions and SPFx, and I've put etc. because John always has a bunch of cool stuff to show, so I'm excited to see what he's brought to the call. And then David Warner, the second, is going to show us something he calls Mega Menu using JavaScript Link, JS Link, and he demoed 2 or 3 calls ago. And that was a well-received demo, so really cool stuff, so we're going to see some more from him today. And just a reminder to everybody, if you have something you'd like to demo, please reach out and let us know. We'd love to give you a slot on the call as well. And then we'll have plenty of time, I think, at the end for open discussion. So if you have questions and comments and we don't get to it in the IM window sort of as we're talking, we'll have plenty of time at the end to go over those things. So again, opportunities to participate in the special interest group, i.e. this call, or just the patterns and practices more in general. So you can demo a SharePoint Framework web part, or anything really client-side development related. Stuff using the SPFx library or not, but really encourage you guys to take this opportunity. If you're working on something cool and you want to share it with the community, we'd love to give you guys the forum to do so. So keep that in mind, and if you come up with something, just shoot us a note, let us know, and we'll get you scheduled on a call. So really excited to do that. Contribute on GitHub. So if you've got issues to report, if you've got various things, contribute on GitHub. Love to get the feedback there, love to get the pull requests there. And then, of course, feedback. You can join these calls to provide feedback. You can provide feedback through the communities. We have a Gitter channel specific to the JavaScript core library. It's a great place for feedback, but we really appreciate all that feedback and all that input from the community. It really means a lot to us that you guys are willing to give us that back, and we really try and act on it as much as we can and as quickly as we can. Joel has a question: how do we contact you? You can do that through the Gitter channel, linked off of the repo. You can find me on Twitter at MediocreBowler. And those are probably the two best ways to get at me. But also, on these calls, if for example, I want to demo the next call, you could just pop in the IM window and let us know here. You mean the team? So the core team for patterns and practices, the best way is very similar. So the tech community is great. The Gitter channels is a little bit specific to the SPP and Page.js. But as well, the various issue lists for the libraries are a great way to get in touch with the core team. So, and I will say, if you don't hear back from us immediately, don't think we're ignoring you, because everybody's busy, all of you, all of us. So if you don't hear back right away, we're not ignoring you. We will get back. So don't get discouraged. We definitely are looking for that feedback and looking for that contact. So a quick update here on the JavaScript core component before we get into the demos. So 2.03 was released last Friday. Please, when you get a chance, upgrade. Let us know any feedback you've got on that. Stuff like that. So do check it out. I think there's some great updates in there. I think worth the upgrade. But so do check that out. And like I said, let us know. I want to point out feedback continues to drive those updates. So I don't know how closely folks are watching the issues list for the JavaScript core library, but a couple of things that were added and a couple of the updates, for example, the alias parameters and the relationship management API support or related items API support were direct requests from out there in the community. So if you have something you'd like to see in there, definitely let us know. I can't promise we'll get it in right away, but always want to hear what would be most valuable and useful to all of you who are consuming the library. So another thing just started this week. I'm going to be doing beta releases now for the JavaScript core library. So if you were to get the beta release today, that beta release is actually going to be the same as the 2.03 release right now. No differences, but moving forward, as we add functionality leading up to the main releases, we'll be publishing beta releases so folks can try those things out a little bit early and get a chance to provide some feedback. Maybe we didn't implement something, just right, or maybe there's a bug we didn't catch. Always great to catch that stuff, obviously, before it gets out into a major release. So keep an eye out for those beta releases. And then check out the release blog post. And I changed this up a little bit. And this time, as we added new features, we published a wiki article for each new feature we added. And instead of having a lot of code samples and things, for example, on the blog post, the blog post is now just linking to those articles. And the thinking behind that is the articles live in the wiki, which lives right there next to the code, so I think is a lot easier to find versus trying to go out and find my blog and figure out which of the release posts might have that information and so forth. So I think it'll be a lot easier moving forward to sort of take that approach, and as well it'll sort of naturally grow the wiki content. As we add features, we'll add content. I do want to encourage folks. We talked about it on the last call about graph support in the JavaScript core library. Love to hear from some more folks around that. So if you have a chance, there's a thread now in the issues list on graph support. Like I said on the last call, we're all for it, but we do want to hear from some folks. What the thoughts are, what the best ways. How folks envision using it, how they'd like to use it, and how they'd like to see that kind of play out. Because it's going to be a lot of work, so we'd like to implement it in a fashion that is very usable and natural to everybody who's going to consume it. And then one last thing, please do check out the wiki. If you have questions on using the library or things like that, please check out the wiki. We're trying to build that up and trying to get good content out there. So a lot of the questions we're getting in does have a wiki article related to it. So check that out first. And then, if you tell us, hey, I read this article on fields and it doesn't cover X, that's awesome feedback. We love to hear that, because then we can take that and we can improve that article, and that benefits everybody out in the community. So if you have questions and stuff, please do check the wiki first. We're trying to build that out and get those answers out there. And so if you find something missing, some instructions missing, of which we know it doesn't cover 100% of everything. So if you find something specific missing you were looking for, do let us know, and we'll try and get that out there. Or if you've got some time, certainly encourage folks in the community to contribute to the wiki as well. It's another great contribution opportunity, and I believe it should be open for public edits, so use your power kindly. 2 links down there at the bottom, again, to the SharePoint PnP community, which is, I guess, a different AKMS link to get you to the Microsoft Tech community. And then the second link there is our Gitter IM, I still don't know what to call Gitter, I guess a channel. So do check that out if you have questions and comments around things like that. Bill's saying maybe we can discuss the graph stuff today. Yeah, absolutely. If we've got time at the end in the open discussion, I think that would be fantastic. I think it's a great topic, and happy to keep discussing it. So without further ado, I want to get right to the demo so these guys have plenty of time. So John, you're on the call. You're a presenter. Or are you there?
So a few weeks ago, I joined the PMP PowerShell call, and we did a quick demo of Azure Functions with PMP and particularly with PMP PowerShell. But there was a bunch of material, especially relating to JavaScript and PMP.js core that I wanted to talk about. So I reached out to Patrick and said, hey, I have another demo. So here I am, I'm back again. It is over midnight, and I'm still very excited about Azure Functions. So let me just get going. I have two screens, so here it is. So, is this too small actually? Seems like it's too small. Is it too small? Sorry, I should have done this earlier.
We'll edit this out in post.
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit better.
Yeah, sorry. I did that last time in the prep, I forgot. So all this code I will give to Patrick. So if you can't, don't worry, kind of follow the example rather than try to memorize the code. So between the last code and this code, the Azure function interface got completely revamped, and now I can see multiple function apps in one kind of field. It's actually very cool. So these are all my different functions. Back into my functions here. And I talked in the last code that you can mix PowerShell. So most of these functions are PowerShell. There's F#, but there's also Node.js functions in here. Now, this particular function is actually the code that's pretty much directly lifted from Patrick. Let me find the web URL. Where is it? It's here. Is this one, where Patrick wrote in October 17th how to use NoSPauth and PMP.js core to basically talk to your SharePoint Online site. So I pretty much take the entire code here. I am using the username and password again, but PMP.js core can use client ID and client secret. So if you don't want to use username and password, you can use just client ID, client secret. And basically, we will authenticate. We're using this component from NoSPauth. Is Sergey in the code, actually? Is Sergey in the code out? Sergey has done an amazing bit of work. No, this is a different Sergey. So this is the guy I'm talking about, Sergey. I'm sure we've come across him before as Skynet. And the particular authentication library I'm using is this one, the NoSPauth. But he's also done a lot of work with the Gulp SPSafe that I use, the SP request, which is very good, and the SPSafe. So these four libraries. Actually, I think Sergey became a Office MVP in the last month or so. Last month or 2 months ago. So if he was here, congrats. So this will basically authenticate to my SharePoint Online site. And then this is a setup to take the auth, which will give me the headers, and plug that into PMP. And once that promise is resolved, we are creating a web to my SharePoint Online, and then using PMP.js core as we would in inside the browser. So this is really running PMP.js core in Node.js. So you're running, say if you have built up some JavaScript library based on the PMP.js core that you run in the browser, you can move that code into the server and have that run on a schedule or on some trigger instead of I relying on a browser session to run them. So I'm I really like this because this goes to that isomorphic and universal JavaScript idea, where for the same JavaScript you could run it in the browser, but you can also run it inside Node.js on the server. So if I just hit run here, that ran really quick. Is that supposed to run that quick? Let me try again. Wow, that runs really quick. So because my site is warmed up, that actually runs super quick. Generally, with JavaScript inside Azure Functions, there's this bit. So we create the package JSON, which has the dependency libraries. And then when you do npm install, it pulls down all the dependencies into the folder. So the first time you run a JavaScript function, you take a big hit in the Node.js initializing with all these dependencies. So generally, if it's a cold start, you could be looking at 20 to 30 seconds of just warming up before your function is able to run. And the actual function runs very quickly, so it contacts my Sharepoint site, and then just pull back the title. So let me go back to that code to see that. Yeah, so just log and reply the title. Let me see. It's so quiet. I'm just checking whether there's any comments. Okay, any tip where to start from? Where to start with Azure Functions? So if you go to functions.azure.com and then create a new function, you basically create a function app here. So it's one of these. And then you could do new function. And because we're talking about JavaScript, we pick JavaScript here. And these are all HTTP trigger JavaScript. Cool. So let me go to my next bit. So that's that one. So to initialize a function, if you're doing it all inside the browser, what you need to do is go to the backend, go to manage, go to function settings. Oh yeah. Hey. I actually don't know where the function settings is. It here? Oh yeah, it is. Because they change everything around. And you want to go to Kudu. Where is Kudu? Here. Long running job. So Azure Functions will time out after 5 minutes. So if you have a really long running job, you want to break it up by putting, split the big task into little tasks, put that into a queue, and then have the queue spawn many little tasks. So inside Kudu, the debugging console, but basically there is a command line interface when it comes up over here. If you go into the site, go into my code Node.js function here. Here is where you will run these two lines. The npm initialize. You want to with the take all the defaults, because normally when you initialize an npm project, it asks you for various interactive questions, but this is not an interactive console, so it will just get stuck. So you really just have to take the defaults. That will give you a blank package JSON, and then you can install the dependencies. So that's the blog post. And then I want to quickly move on to the next part. So one of the questions that was raised, can these functions be run as a timer job? They can. So we talked about that in the last code, in the PMP PowerShell code. There's several ways to do that. So I'll encourage you to catch that particular one. Let me quickly show you this next part I wanted to do. So there was a question last time whether we can run functions locally. So what I have here is Visual Studio Code, and I have let me just open that in the Explorer. Open the Explorer. So here's the function running. Here's the code for my function inside my local drive. And there are two additional bits that you want to get. Let me just show you this guy. So the first one is you need this one, the Azure Function CLI. This gives you the command line interface for doing Azure Functions work inside Node.js locally. So grab it from there. And then this is a link to the blog post on how to run Azure Function locally with the CLI. And I have a little code I want to do here. So this is pretty much the same code. I'm connecting to my SharePoint Online, but I'm doing it from my console. The way to run this is actually just close this. So with the Azure Function CLI installed, you have these tools. If you say the tool show alias to func, but if you do func Azure, it will try to run your instance that's deployed to Azure Functions. If you don't have Azure, you'll run everything locally. So if I just hit that, it's going to work out, hey, Azure Functions not running, it spins it up. It throw me a massive ugly error. Why is this throwing this error? Oh dear. Let me quickly do one thing. It's complaining about my password, I think. Sorry, 1 second. I swear this was working earlier. Let me just quickly uncomment that. So I popped that into a little folder there. Let me try that again. So yeah, so you see here the functions return with the same. Yes, he errored. This is actually to do with where I store my password. I put my password inside the environment, but when I start a new command line session, the password is not set. Whereas in my Azure Functions, I put it in the function settings. So this is where it's stumbled. Anyway, I filled it with a temporary, I included a temporary filler that gives me this variable. But again, the similar code runs, and you can see here it spin up the HTTP trigger locally. It's triggered it, the HTTP is here, and it's triggered it, and it's returned the title of the site. Now, one more little quick one. This is pretty cool here. Oh, no, not this one. It's this. That one. So that one I'll leave running. Okay, now let me just close that. So to do debugging, you need to run the function locally with the debug keyword. And there's this two-step thing. The function starts, but then you have to have your Visual Studio Code attached to that browser instance. So you start this, and it's gonna start this guy, and it's gonna say, quick, set your debug point. So you come here and hit F5. And I don't know, did that work? No, it's unhappy. Let's try it again. And here we go, it's working. First time doesn't work, second time works. So you can see it stopped here. Let me just F10. So you can see the Azure function, the Node.js Azure function is now debugging in my Visual Studio Code. So the Visual Studio Code has hooked into the Node.js server. I think it's the Express server, I'm not sure. But it's hooked into the server in the debugging endpoint, which is this debugger 5858. And now I'm debugging the Node.js Azure function that's running inside inside my code. So if I just skip that, you see it's grabbed a header, it's gone and talked to my web, and it's retrieved my web. So I'm asking for the title and the description. So you can see my description, my title has come back. Okay. Just reading the comments to see if I miss anything. So one thing I thought was pretty amazing is Sergey's work with the NoSP request, in that when it's using username and password pair, it's actually retrieving a I wonder if it's easy to see this. Let me put this breakpoint. But it's actually retrieving a federated cookie. I thought it was brilliant. It does all the NTLM, it does all the NTLM authentication, and then pretty much give you a cookie here. See here, this federated auth cookie? It's humongous. And by attaching that cookie to the browser session, essentially you're logging in as that user. So it's very cool. I work with a mix of small and medium clients. I don't really work for a large client. And I constantly have this situation where in some clients I have tenant admin access, so I could register applications, I could easily get client ID and client secrets. And then there are other clients where I don't have that permission. All I can ask for is some sort of user account. So using really with the username and password option, that gives me a second way of authenticating, and then using the PNP.js code, which I think is really, really powerful. Really like it. One last quick demo, because I don't want to take all the time like last time I did with PowerShell. So if you look at the folder, this is all the node dependencies that I pulled down as part of this function. So the function itself is really small, just 3K, but the node dependencies is huge. This folder is 18 megabytes. And this ties to that startup code start penalty that you take when your function hasn't been running for a while, so it's not set up in memory, and then you want to run this function. It has to copy it to a VM, and then spin up Node.js and load all these Node modules. So you really take a penalty in both the storage, the amount of files, the amount of data you need to store, as well as the time it takes to start this function. So Christopher Anderson, he's one of the PMs on the Azure Function team. He wrote this thing. It's called the Azure Function Pack. And you install it using this npm install Azure Functions Pack. What this tool does is it uses, I pay my American Express. That's a terrible thing to see. So what this tool does is it uses Webpack to essentially crawl through your function and your package JSON and pack all the dependencies of your node modules into one file. I'll just quickly show you what that does. So if I come here, do I still have it? Yeah. So let me just do that. So if I, no. I always type fun pack. It's actually func pack. I want to pack this current folder. So it's packed. It's actually the server detected that you changed the host configuration, so it's reloaded your function. What that does is, in your function here, instead of the index, which is also reading all the node modules, what is done is it's created this packed file. See, all the modules that your function uses is packed in here. And then it's replaced the function JSON, which is the entry point, and say, hey, instead of the index.js, please run the .funpack index.js. So if I run this, you'll see it does pretty much the same thing. It grabs the key and then returns me the site. But this function file is a hell of that. I don't know if I can swear. It is so much smaller. It is actually tiny. So the index.js packed with all the node modules, that's a 3 megabyte file. And let me just wrap this up. So if you deploy that to the cloud, so I have that. That's the Node.js function. And I have another one. This one is the fun pack. You'll see it doesn't have the Node.js folder here. It just has the function JS, which points to the fun pack file, which is here. That's about the 3 megabyte file. Let me go back up. This guy's not even used, so it's just sitting there. And if I run this function, yeah, it does the same thing. So it authenticates, gets the cookie, and then grabs the site title from my SharePoint site. So this, I think, is the way to go. And last time I did this demo with the PnP PowerShell, we talked about, oh, you put all the PnP PowerShell DLLs into the function, and then you can share it with different functions. That's still about 20 megabytes of file that you will put into your function. Whereas if you webpack and just use, it drops the libraries that you're not using, you can end up with a much smaller function that will load very quickly. So that's the Azure Function Func Pack. That's that one. I think that's all. So costs. I always want to talk about costs. This month, Azure Function has cost me $2. Okay, that's all. I think I'll give the stage to Patrick.
Great, awesome stuff, John. Thanks so much. David, if you want to start taking over as presenter, you should be all set. So I don't have anything to share on the government cloud. I understand from all the questions, you guys would love some sort of statement on that, and I don't have one to give on this call. I don't know if we can give one on the next call, because I don't, if we don't have something to share publicly, we don't have something to share publicly. But I'll check. I'll mention it to Vesa and see what we can get. But otherwise, let's see if David is ready to go.
Yep. Morning. How are you?
Howdy. All right. Take it away.
Thanks, everybody. So if you were on the last call that I demoed on, this will look familiar to you, the Rocky site, so you could say that this is the Rocky 2 demo. We're going to talk about the mega menu today, the navigation. So this is typically a great opportunity and a conversation piece, a critical component around any web application, especially within SharePoint, because you have lots of SharePoint subsites, your root site, and navigation around usually becomes a critical key point. We know that with mobile devices really accelerating, almost overtaking the use of applications, especially SharePoint Online, in our lives, touch-friendly, interactive applications and navigation providers become even more important, right? And we know that many of the historical navigation providers in terms or experiences are driven by hover states, stuff like that. And so we had a solution created that we created in-house. So this is not a commercial product that we purchased or anything. We created it in-house that we tried to solve a number of issues. We wanted it to be functional and usable by just about anybody, whether they were on a mobile device, a phone, a tablet, a small tablet, large tablet. You could be on a iPad Pro 12-inch and invoke a desktop experience. So you couldn't even rely necessarily on the desktop using a hover state based on media queries and responsive design, simply because larger devices like that would invoke the desktop experience unless you were device sniffing, which is a little more costly as well. So we just wanted to rely on pure media queries and know that it's going to work on any device devoid of whether you had a mouse or not. And so what you're seeing here is the navigation provider. And for those of you who were not on the demo last time, the site you're looking at here is driven completely in SharePoint Online. It is not using a custom master page. Everything here you're seeing, the responsive design, the feature functionality, is all done using nothing more than HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, injected via user custom actions and using JSLink. Patrick had mentioned that this particular example uses JSLink. JSLink was used for the Iconography Engine, which, if you're not familiar with that, if you go back a few demos, you'll be able to see that. If you calls on YouTube, you'll be able to see that in the PNP YouTube channel. This one is using mostly user custom actions. So as we go through, I'll give you the tour of the mega menu. It is, like I said, completely touch friendly. So when you click on it, it actually expands a panel, right? And so you're not probably seeing the nice clean animation that you would see if you were sitting in front of my computer. The screen share probably is a little more choppy, but there's a nice clean animation that opens up the panel and allows you to see what the contents are. And each one of these has their own panel, and you can click on one to open it. Obviously, if you're on one that's open and you click another, it will close the one that's open. It would be confusing in the desktop experience here to have more than one open at the same time, because essentially all they could do is stack, and then you would not know which panel belongs to which menu item. So in the desktop experience, it really only allows you to open one at a time, but it takes care of the closing and reopening. Now, as we look at these items here, as I open up another one, all of these items here can be configured. So you've got your group header down here with your individual links. The sort order can be configured. The location of which column, it allows for up to 3 columns of data. So moving, say, for example, investment strategy over to the second column is completely configurable. The order in which you see your groups is configurable. Now, all this is driven by a list, a SharePoint list. In addition to it being driven by a list and the configuration options, and I'll show you how that all works, it is also responsive friendly. So I'm going to bring up the developer toolbar here, and I'm going to invoke the mobile experience. And as I start shrinking the screen, you're going to start seeing the fonts shifting down a little bit in size to accommodate the reduced size. It's all done just using media queries. And then I'm going to go down to our smallest desktop experience, which is 768. And this is right before we get into the mobile experience. Now, the interesting thing about responsive design, as most of you know, is really you're only swapping in and out CSS. You're not really changing functionality necessarily, or manipulating the actual DOM structure. You're not changing the HTML. In this case, we are. So what happens is we have JavaScript listeners set up to listen for the change of state between what we would call a mobile experience and a desktop experience. So as I shift down by 1 pixel, you're going to see, bam, we've now entered our mobile experience. And when I invoke the mega menu, we can see now it looks a little different. We're not seeing them across the horizontal space, but we're seeing them vertically. And as I open them, we now see much more of a vertical experience that's much more consumable on a mobile device, right? It's normal to be able to scroll up and down vertically on a mobile device. Not only is it normal, but it's also a little more normal to have more than one open. The desktop experience, obviously, yeah, that was, made sense to only have one panel open at a time. But here, it makes a lot more sense on a mobile device to be able to open more than one at a time, right? So we can see not only has the experience changed, the functionality has changed. Now, the cool thing here is that when you have this, most of the time the answer is we need drastic functionality differential between our mobile experience and our desktop experience. So we're going to include both, and then we're just going to use CSS to swap the experiences. We're going to show the mobile, hide the desktop. Show the desktop, hide the mobile. In this case, we're actually not doing that. We're changing the HTML, writing in new HTML when you swap between. What this allows us to do is ensure that only one experience is taking up space in your HTML space at a time, right? You're not bloating your DOM with extra HTML, because truth is, we're sitting here going like this to invoke two different experiences. In reality, most people don't. They're going to load one experience or the other and go do their work. So why overrun the DOM with extra bloat that's not needed? Okay, so that's the experience from a user, but what about an administrator? I'll go ahead and turn off the mobile experience, turn off my developer toolbar, and I had mentioned it's driven completely by a SharePoint list. Now, the cool thing that I always tell people is that if you have experience within Windows Explorer using files and folders, or Mac Finder using files and folders, you can edit the mega menu. It's that simple. It literally uses nothing more than a folder, SharePoint folder, and a SharePoint list item. And that's fantastic because we're really wanting to leverage as much going on in SharePoint as we possibly can, right? Leverage and utilize the beauty of what SharePoint provides you out of the box. And that's really what's going on here. So you'll notice that I've gone into the list, and there's a familiar trend here, right? We see About Acme, active members. So this is all driven by this list and folders. We can see the sort order here. Sort order here is defined. So 1, 2, 8. We have 8 items up here. This particular version of the mega menu actually supports up to 10, and it will dynamically make sure that each of these is spaced individually the same amount evenly if you have anywhere between 1 and 10. So if you had 1, the item would take 100%. If you had 5, it would take 20%. If you had 10, it would each take 10%, right? So it dynamically adjusts as you add and subtract items from your top nav. And then, so we go into About Acme. We see that we've got the rest of our items here now. If we load down that, and I'll kind of scroll down here so we can kind of see them both at the same time, a piece of them. We see About Acme Home, legislation, internal audit plan and reports, media center, right? All in order, 1 through 4, column 1. We move over to column 2, board of trustees, Acme calendar events, etc., etc. So we can see the trend there. It's as easy as changing one of these items. So let's say we wanted to move legislation over from the first column to the second column. So I'm going to go ahead in here to legislation. I'm going to edit the item. And I'm going to say column location 2. And I'm going to just say, I don't know how many we had, so I'm just going to say 7, because I know there's less than 7. Now I'm going to hit save. And now I'm going to go ahead and open Acme members, or About Acme, and you can see what in the world. It's still in the first. It's still in the first column. Why didn't it change? Exactly. We have not set it up to pull from this list live. Why? Performance. Imagine, if you will, we have a navigation, right? And it changes in most organizations, maybe half a dozen to a dozen times a year. The performance cost, though, of sending every single person to this list to parse it live for every load is costly. It's expensive. So user custom actions to the rescue. You may have noticed we have a mega menu tab up here in our ribbon. So what we've done is we've actually set up a user custom action, which again, a user custom action is nothing more than a reference to a JavaScript function or file, or executes JavaScript to pull in a JavaScript file. So you'll notice that it's labeled publish mega menu JSON, right? So we put all the weight and all of the performance and all the cost of processing this list on a one-time run when you go and edit your list, right? And so all that cost is done once on the client by the content author at the time they're making the changes. Additionally, it's kind of a security feature, right? It allows us to make the changes and see what's changed and then go publish it for everyone else. So we'll take a quick look at the SharePoint Online client browser to see what that means, right? So here I've logged into my site. I've gone to my list, Mega Menu SP, And then you'll notice user custom actions down here, right? And what that does is I've got an export JSON. I've given it a title, and really the meat and potatoes comes into this command UI extension, which is kind of hard to see here, so I've got it loaded right here for us. And we can see really all it's doing is it's creating a custom UI extension there on the ribbon. We've got our button here, right, which is publish mega menu, our label text publish mega menu JSON. And then what it really does is down here is the UI handler. And so I've got a function here, CSP microsolution mega menu export JSON, and so that's pointing to a function that lives in two JavaScript files, or one JavaScript file that actually is loaded already, right? So here's my export JSON. So what this does now, and this will look familiar to some of you guys from the last call, the table of contents and orderly documentation, is it goes through and it identifies, hey, what's the name of the JSON file that I want to be consumed? What are my column names? What are my, where's the style, or where's the library name that is located, the subpath that I'm going to put my JSON. And what it does is it just goes through using JavaScript and starts to parse my JavaScript, or my list, pulling out all the information I need. And it does all the sorting, all the grouping in this one time, so that when we go parse the JSON to actually display the mega menu, then it's simple. We're not doing any sorting or grouping or anything, because that's all been done for us at the time of exportation of the JSON. Right, and so then what it does is it spits it out into a nice, clean, flat JSON file like we've seen here. I've got a desktop version and a mobile version, because the sorting is different for the mobile and the desktop. So what will happen then is I'll go in here to my mega menu folder, and here's my demo data. That's what's driving my navigation, and I'm going to check that out. So now I'm going to go back to my list, and we know we've made the change. We moved legislation over into the second column. We've given it so order 7. Oh, perfect. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and publish that mega menu. And so now it's going to let me know the mega menu JSON has been successfully exported. Lets me know where. This is just a pop-up that I created in my custom JavaScript. Again, all just JavaScript, HTML, CSS. I'll hit OK. And so now, even though we're in a system page, I'll go ahead and refresh. I'll refresh the page. And when I open up About Acme, we see legislation has moved now down to the bottom from the first column to the second column, just simply by changing the item here in the list. The nice thing is that you'll notice that I had to check that file out. So I talked about a security feature, right? The security feature is that no one else sees my changes. This allows the content author to go make their changes, then confirm their changes all looked accurate. So if I come back to my home page and refresh, we'll see the same thing. So now I'm able to go make sure all my changes were accurate. I didn't fat finger something. I didn't paste something in that was incorrect. I can confirm all my changes are good to go, and then I can actually confirm, yes, okay, the changes I made were good. Now I go back in, I check in my file, and it's published to the world at that point. Might have to go through some workflow, etc. Now, parsing and processing this is actually pretty cool, right? So now we've set up our HTML to just go ahead and consume it. So we can see I'm loading my CSS here. I'm loading my CSS, and then I just start going through. Now, the power of what allows us to consume or know that we need to invoke the mobile experience or the desktop experience is in one of my new favorite words, right? It's a pseudo attribute. So we set up a listener. You can't change functionality of your mega menu or you can't set up a JavaScript listener on the change of a media query, but you can listen for changes of events inside of your content. So the key here that allows us to do that, to change that functionality between a desktop experience and a mobile experience, is a listener that's looking at this little pseudo attribute right here. You'll notice over here it says desktop. I'm hiding it so that we don't need to see it, but it says content desktop. So when we reinvoke our mobile experience here, and I'll go back down to 768, our smallest desktop experience, we see it still says desktop. Now when I go down 1 pixel, you'll notice that in my responsive design media query breakpoint for 767 to 600, 600 to 767, we've changed and overridden that content to mobile. Now the JavaScript knows, hey, something changed. I need you to go reinitiate my navigation to a mobile experience. Remove the desktop experience, replace it with the mobile experience. And that happens either on load or on shift of the size of your screen. So if someone were to shrink their screen, or more likely, a device orientation change. They change their device perhaps from landscape to portrait, and there's enough resolution change there that it goes and invokes from the desktop experience to the mobile experience. So the benefit, obviously, there is that you have a very fast navigation. It's highly and easily configurable by your content authors, and it's still very performant and very useful. We can really just about in a passive way give access to anywhere in the site you would want in a organized fashion. And there are ways to enhance this. So anybody that was on the call last time saw the Iconography Engine. We've actually created a version that includes the Iconography Engine. So you can have little icons, or you can have what we call a mega menu billboard. You see a little extra space over here. You see a little bit more here now that I moved legislation, so you may want to consume this white space here with an image. We've created a version of it that does that, that's still fully responsive. Let's see, we got about 8 minutes left. That's the bulk of it. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to go check I know there's some that's come in here. Let me scroll back up. Let's see. Let me go back up. Are HTML, CSS instructions available on GitHub? I'm not sure if that was to me. I don't have this up there yet, but reach out to me. We can definitely talk about getting you keyed into some of it. Is there a configuration option? I have a point to a list of choosing. No, in this case, it's all set up on the JavaScript. So the JavaScript defines where the list is at, but you could configure it to look at the web. We have clients that did that. So instead of just pointing to the root web, you could change the JavaScript to point to the local web, so you could have each individual sub-site, for example, have its own location and collection of lists that are independent. Content type is the pointer. Run off the site navigation. Yeah, so no, in this case, it's just running off the list because we want it to be easily configurable by the content authors. Again, it is all just JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So using things like the PNP core, obviously in this case it's using a user custom action, which doesn't work in the current modern experience. But as we know, replacements for those are coming. And so being that this is just purely JavaScript, HTML, CSS, it'll just be invoking it in a new way once that's defined. Lock down the list to an admin only. Yep, absolutely. Can you control the permissions for the list items? Great question. So if you wanted to security trim, in this particular instance on this demo, it's not security trimmed because it's just consuming the JSON as it is displaying it. Although I've created a version that is security trimmed. So at the list item level, when you go here, if we were to go in and edit one of these, for example, I'll go in and edit About Acme Home, there is an item, an additional site column that I had added that said security trim. And so that way what it does is it rolls through when it's creating the mega menu off of the JSON. And if you flagged something as, hey, this is security trimmed, it performs an extra step, goes out, checks the current user, checks to see if the user has access, and then either includes or removes that mega menu item from the mega menu. So they never see it to begin with. It obviously adds a little bit to performance costs because at that point it is having to make that list call or that SharePoint call every single time instead of just parsing the JSON in its entirety. So hopefully that answers that question. If not, reach out to me. Instruction we're using. Yeah, we went this over managed metadata simply because we wanted it to be configurable. When you go to managed metadata, you're not going to have all the extra data. For example, things like the column location or the sort order, and they wanted it to be easy and not necessarily require that level of administration. They wanted it to be simple that way. Navs may change a few times a year, but perms can literally change more than that. Absolutely. So hopefully my question before answered that. Can this be done with pure CSS? Probably not. Yeah, probably not. There's a version you could create, but probably not necessarily in this way that's so holistically included in using SharePoint. Font Awesome or Office Fabric, the icons are using Font Awesome. It doesn't work with modern experience. Exactly. So the user custom actions don't necessarily, obviously a lot is not working in the modern experience right now, but again, it is just pure JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So once those replacements for user custom actions come out, as we know they will, then we'll be able to use that. For icons, go with Office Fabric, has app icons, those are awesome. Yep. The cool thing, though, I will say is that you can create your own icon fonts too, right? So anywhere that you need a collection maybe of fonts or icons that are found in separate fonts, you could do that. You could create your own custom collection. There's web applications that allow you to do that. We've done that for other clients that wanted a collection of them, some from the Office Fabric, some from Font Awesome or others, and then they had their own custom. So we combined them into a singular font for them, and then you set up the Iconography Engine down here to use that. So we are just about out of time, 4 minutes. Patrick, I'll pass it back to you. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions, but I appreciate you guys' time today.
Great, thanks, David. Great stuff as always. Thanks, John. Awesome demos. I hope folks got some good stuff out of there. It's always great to see what folks are doing. Again, I encourage all of you, if you've got something you'd like to show on the call, please do let us know. We'd love to give you a slot and get you on here to show off some stuff. So we do have a few minutes left. We can go kind of to the open discussion. I don't know if anybody has any questions or wants to. I know we kind of mentioned we might talk about graph. I don't know if 3 minutes is really enough time to get on that, but happy for if anybody wants to come off mute and share their thoughts around adding the graph support to the JS core, or questions around anything else that we haven't been able to answer throughout the call.
Yeah, Patrick, I think that's would be really good. I'm really interested to see that you'd already thought about that and kind of thought about it when coming up with the naming conventions. So, that's something I'd be interested in contributing to. I don't know how much time I can contribute to it or commit to, but something that I think would be very worthwhile. And I thought maybe you could even wrap the MS Graph, and then where there's some functionality that's not yet available in MS Graph, we could then drop back to, for example, the SharePoint REST API and kind of shim that out until such time that the MS Graph supports it. So I think there's some interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Let's see, I can't say anything other than there's stuff coming in SharePoint Framework that's going to make this work easier, which is why I personally haven't actually started writing any code on this yet. So I'll kind of throw that hint out there to everybody. But I do think it's a great idea. So Bill, certainly appreciate if you've got some time to jump in, and anybody else is welcome to help out there as well. Let's see.
Should we hold back until? Should we just hold back? I would hold
back for now, just because the bits that are coming are going to make all the stuff a lot easier in terms of the auth part and things like that.
Okay, thanks for the heads up.
Perhaps I've said too much, but I would hold off on doing a lot of heavy JavaScript graph dev for a little bit.
Okay.
Will Graph be moved to the government cloud? Again, I don't have any dates to share around that, and I don't do a ton in the government space. There are communities, but unfortunately, due to the nature of government work, typically a lot of those communities are very isolated within a given customer or a given sort of area, right? You know, if it's information security or something like that, and they tend to be fairly closed communities. They're obviously a lot less sort of open than what we discuss here, which is a shame. But I will try and get answers on the government cloud SPFx update. In terms of the graph, I won't have any information on that, but can try and find out. It is a shame that folks in the Gov community get kind of isolated, but unfortunately, I think that's the nature of doing cleared work or doing government work. So it's a bummer, but it just sort of is what it is by nature, I guess, which is a shame. I do agree with that. So we are out of time, so I will thank everyone for joining the call. Our next meeting is April 27th. Can't believe we're already talking about the end of April. Look forward to seeing everybody then. Like I said, if you've got some demos, want to show some stuff off on that call, please do get in touch. We'd love to give you a platform and let you show us all the great work you're doing out there on client-side development. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and talk to you soon.